All right, today we're tackling a really high stakes question, and it's all about one of the most critical decades of your life, your 50s. It's that time when the pressure to make your money grow really clashes with that deep-seated fear of losing everything you've worked for. So let's dive right into the debate.
So here's the fundamental question we're exploring. When you're in your 50s and retirement is just around the corner, is getting into the market something you absolutely have to do to be secure, or is it an optional and maybe even a reckless risk? We're going to break down both sides of this argument, pulled directly from a formal debate on this very topic. Okay, first up, let's hear from the team arguing that investing is essential. Their argument is pretty straightforward. In the world we live in today, investing from your 50s isn't a choice, it's a flat-out necessity. And they build their case on some pretty powerful forces that are totally changing what retirement looks like. So the big point here is that the old rules just might not work anymore. The thinking is, first, public pensions, which used to be the bedrock of retirement, are under a lot of strain. On top of that, we're all living longer, which is fantastic news, but it also means our retirement savings have to last a lot longer, maybe an extra decade or two. And finally, with interest rates basically at zero, just letting your money sit in a savings account, well, it's just not going to cut it. That money isn't growing at all.
Now, this slide really paints a picture, doesn't it? This data from Japan shows that over half of all household financial assets are just sitting in cash and bank deposits. Now look at the US. It's under 12%. This is what some people call sleeping money. It feels safe, sure, but it's not working for you. It's definitely not growing. And what about this number? 25.04 million Japanese yen. This is the average savings for an elderly couple's household in Japan. But the key word there is average. For every family that has more than this, there's another one that has less. And that's the foundation of their argument. For a lot of people, what they've managed to save just won't be enough without some serious investment growth. And this quote really sums up the whole pro-investing side's conclusion. When you're facing longer lifespans, smaller pensions, and zero interest from the bank, they argue that investing isn't just a good idea. It's the only real tool you have left to build the retirement you want. But of course, that's only one side of the story. Let's switch gears and look at the other side of the debate. This team argues that calling investing essential is not just wrong, it's actually dangerous. Their whole case is built on caution, safety, and a very healthy respect for risk. At the very heart of their argument is this one concept, principal loss risk. It's the simple and kind of terrifying idea that the money you invest could just shrink or even disappear. And when you're in your 50s, the amount of time you have to bounce back from a big loss is a whole lot shorter. So this slide really lays out the classic trade-off, right? On one hand, investing offers the potential for big returns, but it comes with big risks. On the other hand, the alternatives, like just saving or paying off your debts, they offer safety and predictability. And if you're in your 50s, this side argues that protecting the money you've already worked so hard for should be your #1 job. So if you're not going to invest, what's the plan? Well, the anti-investing side has a whole toolkit of safer strategies. They say you should lean on your corporate retirement funds, which for big companies can be pretty hefty, averaging around 20 million yen. You should also go hard on saving during your 50s, which for many people are their peak earning years. They also champion things like tax-advantaged pension plans like IDACO in Japan. The logic is simple. Cut your future bills by paying off your mortgage and maybe plan to work a little bit after you officially retire. Okay, now for the really fun part. We're going to look at the moments in the debate where the two sides went head-to-head, directly attacking each other's core beliefs. This is where it gets good. First up, what about a huge market crash? The pro-investing side says, hey, relax, look at the history, over the long term, markets always recover and grow. But the anti-investing side hits back with a killer question. What exactly is long-term when you're 55 years old? It took about 6 years for the market to recover after the Lehman shock. If something like that happens when you're 60, can you really afford to wait that long? That's a tough question. Next up, the battle over inflation. The pro-investing side argues that cash isn't safe at all. Every single year, inflation is quietly eating away at what your money can buy. They say investing is the only way to fight back. But the other side is a clever counter. You don't have to risk your money in the market to beat inflation. Instead, you can fight its effects by being really aggressive about cutting your fixed costs, making your money go further without ever having to risk it. And the final showdown is all about this. Are the traditional tools even enough anymore?
The pro-investing camp says no, they just aren't, not with how long we're all living these days. But the anti-investing side says hold on. They believe that if you're smart and combine your retirement funds, your dedicated pension plans, and a little bit of post-retirement work, you can absolutely have a secure retirement. No gambling on the market required. So after all the arguments, all the rebuttals, a formal judgment was actually made in this debate. Let's take a look at who won, and more importantly, what this all means for you. And there you have it. In this particular debate, the victory went to the affirmative side, the team arguing that yes, investing from your 50s is essential. So why did they get the win? Well, the judges felt they had a more convincing plan for actually managing investment risk, through things like diversification. They also thought the pro-investing side did a better job of tackling the huge, unavoidable issues of inflation and people living longer. And finally, the judges pointed out that the safer alternatives the other team proposed, like having a big corporate pension, well, that just doesn't apply to everybody. And this right here is probably the most important takeaway of all. A debate is an exercise in who makes the better argument on that particular day. It does not, and it absolutely should not, be taken as direct financial advice for your life. In fact, the source material itself ends with this really critical warning. Investing is a tool. It's not a commandment. It is just one path you can take, and if you choose to take it, it has to be done with careful thought, with research, and with a really honest look at your own situation and what you're comfortable risking. You have to go in with your eyes wide open. So we end by throwing the question back to you. Now that you've heard the passionate case for why it's a necessity and the cautious argument for why it's not, where do you land? For you personally, which one is it? As we've seen, it's a decision that takes some really careful judgment. Thanks for joining us.